Welcome to Be Creative, Create Your Future. I appreciate all of you coming out. I know it's cold and some of you should be studying for your midterms, so don't blame that one on me. But despite the cold, I think the night will be worth it. So I'm just going to frame this out real quick and then we'll get to the panel. There's a misconception that a specific degree can limit you guys, students, to a career choice. The purpose of tonight is to open the minds. Can everyone hear me, by the way? Good in the back? Okay. So the purpose of tonight is to open up your minds and the eyes of all of you and get you thinking about your careers in media, creative services, publishing, other fields where art, communication, humanities, marketing, and business may have some application what you're thinking about. So I see a lot of you. I know a lot of you guys, and I get a lot of, I'm not sure what I want to do. What can my degree do? So I'm hoping tonight this panel will kind of help you clarify that and open up your minds a little bit, as I said. So the best panel discussions become discussions. So I'm going to the best panel discussions become conversations. I'm going to ask questions, and I'm hoping these guys will just organically take some of those questions and create a conversation amongst themselves. So I just want to introduce Pete Sussi from Platypus.
Hey guys.
And on the end, having cleanup, Colette, Levinstein, and Vanessa.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, it's showtime. No pun intended. Paul, I'm going to start with you.
Oh.
So you're on the spot. At Showtime, you manage a large and varied team. Can you tell us some of the positions, titles you have in your team? This is what we were talking about before. You said there were 900 people at Showtime?
At Showtime. Okay.
So tell us a little bit, if you can, about some of the positions that you deal with as SVP of Production Technology. Pretty diverse group. I'm familiar with what you do and some of the people there. But just tell the students a little bit about the diversity up there.
This feels a little like an impeachment hearing. Like, Mr. Senator, I have no recollection. I was not there.
You taking the fifth? All right, we'll move the question.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Senior Vice President of Production and Technology at Showtime. What that means is, essentially, we have an in-house creative agency at Showtime. The whole company is about 900 people, but there's about 125 or so that are in this in-house creative agency that does every single thing that you could possibly do to market or promote or advertise either Showtime the channel, Showtime the service, the streaming service, the movie channel, Flicks, Smithsonian channel, those are our brands as well. So we're either marketing the shows themselves with trailers and billboards and bus wraps and magazine ads or whatever, or we're marketing the service itself. Sign up today for $25 off and those kinds of marketing type messages. So the kinds of people ultimately that are on my team in that is essentially everything but the creative department. The creative department comes up with the idea, and then my teams actually make that idea come to life. So that might be, on the video side, it might be line producers who manage the budget of a shoot, hire camera crew, get permits for locations, have sets built with contractors and carpenters and things like that. Project managers to keep all of the video projects on time and on schedule, making sure we meet our deadlines. Rights and clearances team, making sure that we have the rights to put all of the music and the video and the pictures in the spots. Because there's a lawyer waiting around the corner to sue you for everything that you possibly try to do. We have video editors, of course, technical side, right? Camera people that shoot, people that edit, people that do graphic work. So everything that's on the screen except the actual moving video, but it might be the type or some special effect and things like that. So, all of those kinds of aspects. And then on the print side or the print digital side, it's photographers and retouchers and graphic designers that are doing mechanical work, preparing files for printers. It's digital asset management people. So I have a staff of people that just do nothing but keep track of all the files that we're making for all of these things, right? We call them assets. Every video, every clip, every logo, every picture has to go somewhere and be tagged so we can search and find it for another use. Who am I forgetting?
That's pretty good.
print buyers, people that buy printing from printers and hire the billboard companies to actually hang the billboards, all of those kinds of things.
All right. So the point of all that is you can work in legal, finance, marketing, strategy, graphics, creative, post, pre-production. That's a lot of different job titles in one company. So that gives you guys an idea of just how wide the spectrum is for all of you. Okay? All right. So next question. Lex, you're up. As publishing professional with an English degree, can you tell the students a little bit about your journey? And I'll tell you why I asked that in a minute. How did you get from the degree to a senior managing editor role at Macmillan? Was the English degree significant? Did it play a role? And I ask that because we have English majors here.
How many English majors here still don't know what you want to be when you grow up? Because I was one of you. I graduated college and I still didn't know what to do with my English degree, so to put off the decision for a while, I actually taught overseas for a year. Then I came back and went to grad school. Again, I still wasn't sure what I was going to do. I ended up getting an MFA in creative writing because I was going to be a famous writer. I mean, isn't that just how it happens? But famous writer doesn't come with health insurance. So actually at a pretty late age, in my late 20s, I started taking internships at agencies and publishing companies. And I realized, hey, wait a minute, I'm actually good at this. And I got the kind of fulfillment from editing that I used to get from writing. So I kind of fell into it in a cockamamie way.
No, I like to think that your career path is one of two choices: deliberate, you know where you're going to go, you go there. And then there's the organic.
It happened organically. I never set out to become an editor in publishing, but because I wanted health insurance, it kind of went that way. And it ended up working out.
Awesome. All right, Colette, you're up. So you've been in the hiring community for a long time. You manage a wide variety of hires. That said, as someone in the creative services that spearheaded college recruitment programs, I read that in your profile, can you share some insight that will help the students and faculty that are here tonight understand how they can prepare for a career with a degree in English, history, art communications? And if I remember, we talked a little bit ago, you are an English major.
So I graduated from the SUNY school, SUNY Binghamton, and my major was English and rhetoric. But my passion and my profession is recruiting. So I work for a large advertising global marketing and advertising firm called Interpublic Group. And in Interpublic Group, there are 6 different businesses that it's split into. So one of those businesses is called IPG Media Brands. And media brands, what they do is they do database marketing and media buying. So what we did is that we took through 2 agencies and the IT support arm from media brands, and we established our own company called IPG Kinesso. So that's Kinesso, in case if any of you were wondering what Kinesso is. So I do all the hiring, STEM and non-STEM hiring for Kinesso. One of the things I would say as a non-STEM graduate is that I really prepared beforehand, before I graduated, what it is I wanted to do, number 1. Number 2, I always watched current events, like what the political climate was, what hiring, what the economics looked like in the general environment. So that kind of helped me steer towards what I would be able to do after graduation. Number 3, I found my passion. What is it that you're passionate about? Is it working with people? Is it writing? There's a lot of professions. I don't know of any sector, whether it's finance, compliance, operations, that cannot use a good communicator, a good, crisp, solid communicator that can communicate their ideas to their teams and to their stakeholders. If you, looking at your background, are you adept in Excel or Office products? I don't know of a sector that doesn't use Excel. Excel is widely used. Get basic computer skills. That's what I would definitely recommend. And then in terms of like finding out and steering yourself in what you want to do, get some internships. And even if you cannot get an internship, volunteer. Volunteer is the best way, besides an internship, to get experience in what you would call the real world. You learn responsibilities, you learn leadership, you learn organization, and all of those areas. And when I graduated from school, my focus was to be a preschool teacher. But as you can see, I went in a totally different direction. I went corporate. And then I started to learn a little bit of computer skills, and then, I went into technology. And I wasn't a coder, I wasn't a programmer. I decided to use my people skills to go into HR, IT. So that's my journey, and that's what I would recommend to you. Basically finding out what your passion is, getting those basic computer skills, watching the market, making sure that, you understand what's going on in political, economic market, and then just, working towards your passion.
So key word there, guys, passion. Some of you have seen me speak. I always tell you, think from here, not always from here. Do what you want to do what you like. It's very important. It really is. So an intern came up. We're going to talk about interning in a bit. But Andrew, one for you. Pete, I didn't forget you. But
Patiently waiting.
You're next, I promise. Andrew, Bachelor of Science, Business Administration degree from UMC. Good basketball team. How did this degree work for you when you were ready to look for a career opportunity? Did it position you in a way? Did you plan it? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, nothing sounds more boring than business administration. It's like, do I have any...
Versatile degree.
It is. And I'll get to that in a second. Do I have any people in the room that are interested in marketing, communications, advertising? Oh, yeah. Okay. We're in business. So I work at Saatchi, which is an ad agency, a rival of my friend Colette here, but I'm going to be nice to her because she's a hiring manager. In case I need a job in the future, I don't want to burn any bridges.
SmackDown starts at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. So I always, like so many of you, I was interested in marketing, probably for a lot of the same reasons that you are. It's a cool industry. It really is. Advertising is fun. It's creative. It's fast-paced. No 2 days are the same. And I went to a school that actually had a really good journalism school and an advertising program within that school. I deliberately decided not to go there because I felt it was important, as boring as it sounds to be a business administration major, to understand the underlying factors of my clients' businesses, right? When looking ahead to the future, I think that in hindsight, I think a career in business or a degree in business administration helped me understand a lot more of the ins and outs of a client-side marketer, which in turn has helped me build, I think, really strong relationships with my clients. Because one of the things that you want to do if you're going to go agency side is you really want to make sure that you're proving to your clients that you understand their business. I'll be honest, a lot of the stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis internally at my agency, you can't learn in any school. It's crazy stuff. I mean, you learn by doing, and so I think it was much more important for me to have a foundational understanding of the way the normal business world works, because advertising is anything but normal, and I mean that in the best way possible. So I think the takeaway here is that just because you don't always have to hit the nail on the head in terms of a direct matchy between what you want to do and what your degree is going to be. In fact, sometimes I think something that complements your career ambition can be just as helpful as something that directly underpins it, because it gives you a broader worldview and a better understanding of the surrounding factors. So I regret nothing, even though, again, the business school is really, really boring, but it paid off in the end.
So, Andrew, tell us how you really feel.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of finance stuff, and and no offense to any finance majors in the room, but you got to suffer through that.
Every industry. It's appropriate for every industry.
Yeah, that's right.
So it is a good degree to get. Two words that came up, Colette mentioned communication a minute ago, and Andrew mentioned relationships. Communication, most of you know, is the number one transferable skill. It will clearly, it will help your career development along the way. You must learn how to be an effective communicator. Because if you're going to get inside the head of your client to understand what their needs are, so you can deliver on behalf of the big agency you represent, you've got to be a good listener and a good communicator. So good takeaway from there. So, all right, Pete.
Ready.
You're awake? Okay. As an entrepreneur and a business owner, can you share with us how your major in art and design puts you in the position that you're currently in? You own an incredible agency that creates amazing content.
Thank you.
So tell us about that, please.
I know this might be surprising, but there's more than about 5 or 6 years after these guys. I'm a little bit older than that. So back when I went to school, it was a lot of, it was pens and rulers and stat cameras. And so I got to be honest with you, probably 90% of what I did back in college doesn't apply anymore. So that's kind of talking about evolving and taking a root of something and being able to do other things. So out of school, I wanted to be an illustrator, and I learned really quick that you can't eat and be an illustrator. So that was interesting. So I went into advertising, and I was in advertising for about 23 years, senior creative director, worked on a lot of different types of clients, technology, manufacturing, financial. Kind of got a little burnt out of that in a while, and I said, geez, I kind of like directing or writing storyboards. Let me, try my hand at that. And I kind of got the bug, left the agencies, and I went into doing that. So my agency at the time was doing anything from TV commercials to, we had a lot of Fortune 500 clients, which were great. And did that for a while, and then I said, well, you know what? I kind of was watching Sunday Night Football, and I'm like, wow, these graphics are really cool. And I said, let me just stop playing around. It's kind of a hobby or something like that. And also I went to, at the time, I remember watching a Pixar movie. I think it was The Incredibles I saw, and I'm like, gee, that's so cool. And I was like, let me try my hand at this 3D stuff, and I hammered on it. And I got some notoriety, a couple of magazines picked up my work, a couple of large kind of news places picked up my work, and before I knew it, I was starting to do, we did stadium graphics for the NFL, we did work for Major League Baseball, we did some work with the Emmy Awards, and then I was like, wow, that's kind of fun, and then I was like, what's really fun? I go to these movies and I see these explosions, and I'm like, different robots and crazy things, I'm like, well, that's kind of fun, and like maybe I'll play around with that for a while. And I pounded on that. I kind of have this obsessive compulsive kind of like when I latch onto something, I just hammer. And I was like, you know what? I might want to try that. And everybody's like, you got to be kidding me. It's just like, you're gonna have a VFX house on Long Island. Well, 25 movies later, we just finished White Boy Rick last year. We did Late Night. We did several Netflix movies. Bone Tomahawk, so, don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. And then kind of circled back full circle, and about a year or so ago, we had a lot of our Fortune 500 clients knew me at the time. Were like, we want you to do more of our marketing stuff, because we were already doing a lot of marketing, but from a video aspect. And they kept asking to come back, and I was like, you know what, I kind of got the itch again, and went back to having a secondary company where we have like a full service ad agency doing anything from web, social media, any kind of marketing, you name it, print, it's kind of back. And what's kind of nice is, you tell somebody you're doing an event or you're doing like a show or you want to do a brand, kind of having the guy who, you walk in there and you say, hey, we did the brand for the Emmy Awards, or we did, the NFL team. That's kind of a cool feather in your cap. So bringing it full circle for what he was saying, I was nowhere near 90% of the things that I've done, and it's all passion. And I picked kind of, as I went along, we still do passion projects in the office, which, we'll be there to all hours. And again, if you get your foot in your door, nothing is given to you. You got to pound. You got to have a desire to do what you want to do. And you got to put the extra work in, because if you're there for a check, you might stick around, but if you don't have the passion to really excel and be the best at what you do and have a love for what you're doing, it's going to be hard to succeed. So pick something you love. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it or you can only do this, and stick with it.
So a couple of points I want to kind of pick up on there. What Pete's talking about is, he used the word evolving, change. When you guys graduate, that's going to be one of the most meaningful times in your young life. That's going to be a significant change. And change is disruptive, good or bad. It's disruptive, but it's important. And don't be afraid of it. Embrace it, stare it down. Pete's an example of that. He went for everything he wanted to do. He also talked about earning things. You have to work and pound at it. Nobody deserves, you earn. You have to put the time in. You have to invest in yourself and be committed. None of these people up here achieve what they've done without some sense of commitment. That's an important message. It didn't come out that way in words, but there is a lot of that behind what Pete's saying. So this is for anybody. I'll lob it out and someone can grab it. Recent studies say that colleges have difficulty keeping pace with technology. Paul and I were talking about this before. Technology redefines everything every day. How does technology play a role in careers today? Is it significant? Now, I know Colette touched on Excel and being involved in tech, but everybody up here understands how technology plays a role in what they do. But share some of that insight on the lower level all the way up to sort of a expert level. Who wants to grab it first? Don't be shy, otherwise I'll assign it.
I'll take. Oh, you want to? No, please.
No. I was just going to say, in some ways, I think students coming out of college have an advantage with technology because you're more up on it than the people that are potentially in the jobs that you're aspiring to get. Right? I remember starting out myself in an ad agency when I started my career, or one of my earlier jobs anyway, and I was brought in as a guy that knew how to use the Mac and do type, not even photos yet because it didn't really exist. And there were these mechanical artists, which were airbrush painters that used to make the ads. They used to literally paint them. And they were set up in these stalls. They had not cubicles, cubicles, but they had these old sort of fashioned stalls. And one by one, they got plucked out and a computer went in and a young person went in. And then the guy got plucked out and then a computer went in and a young person went in. So we had the advantage because we were kind of on the wave of that new technology that was coming in. But the other aspect of it is it feels like you don't necessarily have to be the most up on the technology. When you're talking about doing movie graphics and stuff, you're not going to come out of college and be ready to do the next Jurassic Park movie, right? That's something you learn so much actually doing. I think somebody said that earlier. So you just have to be willing to pay your dues and start out at those entry-level jobs, but then tune in to what's actually going on in the world, and whatever your passion is, go after it and hammer on it and really learn that technology. So there's kind of two different ways of looking at the technology, I think.
Oh, I was going to say, when I graduated school, I had very little technology skills. So, after work, I would sit there with a Microsoft program, with an Excel program, with a PowerPoint program, and putter away, practice. I would take little advertisements and try to mimic them in my PowerPoint. I would try to make an Excel spreadsheet. When I started volunteering, I would be the first one to raise my hand and say, oh, can I do something that requires, any sort of computer skills so I can use them? I think when you don't have computer skills, things move very slow and very manual. And in this kind of workforce or market, things move very, very quickly. So the more computer skills you have, the more you practice them, the more you utilize them, your work, it just moves so much quicker when you have those basic skills.
So I'll add to that. So you guys in the room are what we call digital natives. I don't know if anyone has heard that term before. There's a whole generation of people, before us. I'm putting myself in that, that didn't grow up with technology in the same way that you guys do. And I think it goes beyond what my friend here is saying about the fundamental computer skills, which absolutely are if you don't know Excel and PowerPoint, learn it ASAP. But I think there's another component of this, which is just your understanding the world that you live in and the way that the digital world integrates with your everyday life, right? And this is where I think even established, one of my clients is Procter & Gamble. They're a giant global company. And they have trouble, right, keeping up with technology. There's an expression that like the larger the ship is, the harder it is to turn, right? And that's really, there's some truth to that because they get set in their ways and they look back at what worked 20 years ago and 10 years ago and 5 years ago. But even, as Colette was saying, like what happened 5 years ago is a totally different world than what today is, right? Everything moves very, very quickly. And where you guys have an advantage is you understand the digital world. And it sounds silly, but like you understand Snapchat and TikTok and all these things that like probably like half of the senior people at Procter & Gamble don't even, like, have never even heard of, right? And so use that to your advantage because there's knowledge there beyond like what you might be doing on Snapchat with your friends. It's also what are the opportunities from a branding standpoint? How can how can you use that to integrate messaging, from news sources or from influencers or all of those kinds of things? And having a basic understanding of that kind of stuff, I think, will help you and set you apart when you are, in the workforce or vying for a spot in the workforce, which will be very, crowded workforce to try and get into. Understanding how that, how the digital world plays a role in, for example, the marketing landscape or whatever it might be that you're trying to, force your way into, I think is critical because you guys have knowledge that other folks don't. So.
You have grown up with touchpads and keyboards. It's completely intuitive for you. You're all fluid at it. I watch you, I watch my own kids work with technology, and I'm enamored by it. But one of the drawbacks, and Andrew pointed out about the advantage you have, but be aware of that, be cognizant of it because it's a great tool. It's not just a toy and a plaything. It's not just Snapchat, but you can think about marketing, how you self-brand yourselves. You're looking for jobs, you're thinking about internships. Technology will play a role in that. It redefines everything every day. And that, again, is I think what Andrew's referring to is that you have that advantage because you're knee-deep in that transitional time. So, all right, moving on. I read a recent report, Skills that Employers Want in College Graduates. And these were the top hits: critical thinking, problem solving, oral written communication, teamwork, collaboration, digital tech, leadership, professionalism, work ethic, and career management. So Colette, critical thinking. Most of us would agree that it's sound reasoning, having an ability to identify a problem, provide a solution, ability to obtain, interpret, and use knowledge, facts, data to move things forward. How do you demonstrate the originality, that inventiveness that you hopefully have? So how does critical thinking play a role when you hire? Do you talk about that? Are you aware of it? Does it become an open, sort of transparent part of your hiring process, or do you look for subtle underneath signs?
Well, when we interview, we have behavioral interviewing questions. So we give you questions on how you would react or respond in different situations. So yes, critical thinking is the unspoken necessity when you are part of a team. It really helps you break down solutions or break down issues and sort of work with your team to communicate those issues. I always say when you think you need some help in your critical thinking, the way that we are set up at Kinesso is that we sit very closely with our teams, which helps you when you are working on a problem or a solution to work with your teams and debate with your teams. And that really requires looking at a solution through a kaleidoscope, different angles. So when you discuss that with your teammate, that is an example of critical thinking. So critical thinking is definitely, besides the basic core skill sets that you need to perform your job, critical thinking is like the second necessity that you would need. And in 2020, they say that critical thinking is actually one of the second most important things that a college graduate should have in seeking their first job.
Awesome. So Lex, I think the essence of creativity is an ability to generate, develop, and express unique and original ideas. I think it's a skill that applies to any industry. Coming out of creative services, I've had friends in business say to me, "You're so lucky you're in creative." But to be a good salesman, to be a good marketing professional, you still have to be creative. It takes creative thinking, critical thinking. So I'm curious to know to get your career in motion, was creativity or creative thinking part of it? Did you focus on that? Was it helpful? Or your organic journey that we discovered a little bit ago, did that play a role in any of it?
I mean, like I said, I went to grad school because I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I did get a lot of fulfillment out of writing. But I also realized that grad school made me a better reader. And part of being a good editor is knowing the technical aspects of writing, but also knowing the creative aspects of writing. If I'm fixing somebody's work, I have to know when to back off, when to let their voice speak. So a lot of being an editor is recognizing other people's creative instincts and letting them shine, but then also knowing when I need to jump in and fix it for them.
Awesome. Okay. Pete.
Yes.
This report I referred to a minute ago, recent data says, and I mentioned this before, the number one transferable skill, of course, is communications. Written and oral. Either way, it's a significant skill, quality to have. For young hires, tell us what it means to be an effective communicator. And I don't mean just when we have a conversation, but you're messaging on behalf of clients, as most of these people up here are. So can you kind of shed a little light on
Sure.
how that plays a role
Sure.
in things?
So, and I think this really ties into the advertising agency aspect of my business. But yeah, so you have a client, and a lot of times they have a lot of different difficulties. So they have to touch a lot of bases. And if you kind of have a download session from them, it'll be like a 3-hour download session of, we need this, but we got to be careful of that, and we want to hit this, but not piss off that. And your job is taking all that information and boiling it down into something that's easily digestible and that kind of touches all the bases at the same time. And the big trick of that is not having boring, crappy work, right? It's what's the most unique way that you can take this gut feeling and it's going to punch you in the stomach, and you're going to have that visceral kind of reaction to it. You're going to have a feeling to it. Not just saying the obvious, we do this and we do the best X, right? It's creating a story. It's creating an emotion that someone can connect to, a viewer can connect to. So that's huge, because whether you're coming from a copywriting side, whether you're coming from a creative side, which, they're really akin to each other. You can look at a picture and you can absolutely see what that picture is emoting. Nike is fantastic at it, right? They got, the little, the sun's coming up and they got the little chubby kid going over the hill, and you're like, good for him, man. He's doing it, right? You get that feeling like, I get it, right? And it's the same thing with copywriting. You read headlines or whatever. So you want to have somebody who understands that creative writing where I'm going to emote a feeling. Again, it's not like, go out there and buy shoes and go running. There's an emotion behind that. And what's amazing is, even from a B2B aspect, it doesn't have to be a consumer product. It can be a B2B level client, and you could still have that kind of emotion to it. So yeah, we look for people that either creatively or from a copywriting aspect are going to have that kind of a feeling. And even if they don't have it, they're going to say, here's a headline. Nah, Pete, that's weak. That it's got no guts to it, right? And that's what we're looking for.
So storytelling, that's really what creative services is. You create content, you're telling stories on behalf of some client you represent. When you guys are thinking about your careers, you're the brand, the product, the service. Make no mistake, you are going to be marketing yourselves. Now, some of you who I've met in my office, you've heard me say that before, but you are marketing yourselves. So what's your story? Put this aspect of what Pete's talking about in your own head, how it markets you. How do you get your brand narrative out there? So think about that. There's a very cool parallel for that for you guys to understand, because when you hit the streets, you're going to be selling yourselves, and you got to tell your story. All right, Andrew, I know for a fact that you began your career as an intern. I just know that.
This man's brilliance has no bounds.
I'm not going to embarrass you, I promise.
Is there nothing you don't know?
And the word came up earlier. I think Colette mentioned the value of interning, or she just touched on it. But Tell the students the importance of interning. Can it make a difference in a career path?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is absolutely it does make a difference. I was fortunate enough to have 2 different internships before I hit the real world. The first one was at a small agency, or smallish direct-to-market, or direct-to-consumer agency. And the second was a much larger agency called Ogilvy, which some of you might have heard of. They're about as different as
How
possible.
come you didn't mention Shaw Marketing?
Shaw Wonderman, right? My first internship, I was a disaster. I was horrible. I was a terrible intern, and I didn't know anything, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I was fumbling around. I could barely find the stapler, and it was a really good experience for me because I think it was very humbling. I think what happens in college sometimes is you're feeling great, you're full of promise, and you're feeling like you can conquer the world, and that's great, and it should prepare you, to be confident. But sometimes you need a kind of a kick in the butt too, and I think what that first internship did was it showed me how big the world is and how many smart people there are and how fast-paced, the industry that I wanted to go in could be. And I was in awe, honestly, by how busy people were and how confident they looked and how smart everyone was and how they just somehow knew what to do when they got in the door every morning. I mean, I'm here, guys. What do you want me to do? And then the next summer, I was and this was actually really interesting. I just applied to a bunch, I found backdoor websites. I was looking for internships online. I was typing in URLs to I was typing in ogilvy.com/career. You know what I mean? It's trying to find a back door, and found this and applied, forgot about it, and then they called me and I scammed them into I guess accepting me into the internship program. And so then I was at Ogilvy, and I think I started to find my footing because I had some experience. I knew what I was getting into a little bit. I started to understand the machinations of an advertising agency. And I still felt very much like I was never going to make it because there were just so many smart people, and I was I'm just faking it. And that turned into just little by little, me. It was the first week, I was I don't know what I'm doing. And then the 5th week, I was I kind of get some of this. I kind of understand what's going on. And then by the end, I was kind of speaking the language a little bit. And I think that's really I think 2 things came out of the internship for me, which I think helped me get my first job. One was speaking the language, right? Understanding just the fundamentals of what it meant to be in an ad agency, to talk about briefing creatives and to talk about, just understanding the client, agency dynamic and the different roles, account management and production and, strategic, planning and all those kinds of things that I had no idea about before. And so being able to speak to those things with confidence with someone like Colette was very helpful to me. And the other thing was, I think it solidified my passion. And Jimmy mentioned passion earlier, and he's absolutely right that passion is one of the things that you need to reinforce it. You need to be sure that you really have the passion for the thing you're setting out to do. And for me, the internships reinforced to me that this was what I wanted to do. This was really cool. And so I felt by the time that I was applying for real jobs, I felt confident that I was in the right place. So I guess the moral for me would be, don't be down on yourself. If, at the beginning, your internships can feel overwhelming, they're supposed to. And that means that you're invested in it emotionally, and it means that you care enough to get better. So embrace that chaos, and I promise you'll come out better on the other side for it.
So go ahead, Leigh.
I just wanted to say, to get into the publishing industry, which is a very, very hard industry to break into, a lot of people do these special courses that Columbia or NYU offer. So if you have an extra $8,000 to $10,000, I know, if you have an extra $8,000 to $10,000, Columbia or NYU will put you through a publishing program, which more cases than not will lead to a job. Okay. I didn't do that. I was living in New York City and paying New York City rent, and I owed money from my grad school. That wasn't an option. So while I was working full-time, I also took on internships at the age of 27, and I was the oldest intern there. But you know what? It got my foot in the door. So instead of spending that money that I didn't have, the experience of several internships helped me succeed in the publishing industry.
something that Andrew had touched on when he was stapling his fingers together in the first internship. There's always a net takeaway. You have to look for it sometimes, but there's process, there's protocol, there's procedure, there's the idea of establishing peer partners, creating a network for yourself, and those of you know the value of networking. 80% of the jobs secured through networking. So there's always a takeaway for you. So even if it's hard, it's rough, I don't want to hear that, because there's 20 students who want to be in the same shoes. So embrace it, as Andrew said. That opportunity you have, there'll always be something to take. And I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, when you got to Ogilvy for intern number 2, you had a better sense of calm. You just had just a better way of moving it, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
Every
day adds to your arsenal of experience, and every day matters, for sure.
By the way, internships start in like January. Start applying so much earlier than you actually think. And some of you may know this already, but if you're looking for an internship at Showtime, for example, you start in January applying.
So, Paul, I'm just going to put this in front of you, and that's, I know you use interns. I've actually helped you find some from here time to time.
Yeah.
So just tell these guys, same kind of question, can it make a difference? And what your spin is on it. We got Andrew, we got Lex, but what's...
Yeah, I mean, I think he said a lot. It's real world experience. When you're in college, you have no idea. When I was in college, first of all, don't follow my path. My path is just the worst possible path to a career you could possibly take.
Perhaps that's true, but senior vice president Showtime ain't bad.
It worked out okay, but it was just not pretty. But I was a music major, so I played the saxophone in college. So you can't really do much with that. But when I was in college, I didn't have any idea that this job existed. I didn't know that this was a thing. If you told me a television network, what kind of jobs there would be, I probably could name about a dozen jobs. There's a guy that comes up with the idea for the show. There's a guy that puts the show on. The guy that presses play. How many jobs can you come up with? But there's 900 different jobs at Showtime, right? So the only way to access that amazing information is to get an internship, get in the door somewhere at a company even remotely close to the industry that you're interested in, because they're really competitive and hard to get internships at great companies in the exact place that you want to be. So if you can't, don't give up. Don't not take an internship because it's a financial company and not a creative company or something like that. Get an internship no matter what, and use that time to talk to every single person you could possibly get 5 minutes with. Knock on doors and set up time and be very polite and just ask questions. How did you get this job? Do you like this job? What do you like about this job? All those kinds of things, because that's the home run of education right there. I mean, you're going to learn all the necessary skills here at this great university, but that's where you're going to get really the real world practical advice from people who everybody took a different path to get there. Like if you came into Showtime, like all of our interns do, and we have a really good intern program, highly recommend it. They come, they knock on my door, and I tell them my story, and they're like, oh my God, I had no idea that you could get there from here. It just doesn't make any sense. And that's the thing that it really opens up your mind.
Which is what tonight's all about. Your career path does not need to be a straight line. It's just you hear it. Pete, all these guys are talking about how their career path really just did this zigzag of a journey, and they've all landed pretty well. So Richard Branson said, if someone offers you an amazing opportunity and you're not sure how to do it, say yes and then learn how to do it. So not quite fake it till you make it. Andrew mentioned faking it a little bit ago. But risky, could be risky. So can any of you share a personal story that aligns with that kind of thinking? I know I can in my career. I often said, oh yeah, I can do that. And then I would go back to the office or studio and how am I going to do this? So anybody want to sort of share one of those little anecdotes in your career?
Sure.
Pete,
It was one of the first things, I just so wanted to, kind of do some movie stuff, and it was so hard to break in. And I think the first movie we did, it was a Burt Reynolds movie or something like that, and it was something about like a hurricane or something. I think it was, Cat 5 or something like that. And, we had been pitching to try to break in at the time. We didn't really have any kind of a reel or anything. And they said, well, we got to make it look like a Cat 5 hurricane outside, with like, farm stuff flying around the air and cows and trees and all
Sounds
this
like
stuff.
the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, like, can you do this? And I'm like, we can, no, no problem. And of course, I went back in the office. I'm like, how the hell are we going to do that? Like, I have zero clue how I'm going to do this. But
you figured it out.
you put your back to the wall and you said, you got that fear of God that like, all right, we got our opportunity. Let's do this. And it also when you try to do your first versions of it, you're like, wow, that stinks. And you got to be honest with yourself. And I push it further, and we were quite happy with happened, and we got quite a bit of work off of that also. So it was taking that jump. And like you said, I think you have to know in the back of your head that I feel pretty good about this, but I'm not 100% sure. And it's pretty exhilarating to do it when you stretch yourself, right?
The key word, risk. Take yourself out of your comfort zone from time to time. That's a good way to push things forward in your career and in your life. Anybody else want to tell us a little story? I know there's more at this table.
I'd tell you like the opposite of that story.
Please.
Because I alluded to the crazy path a second ago, but I'm going to give you like the Cliff Notes version of this story. But as I said, I went to school for music, played the saxophone. I was getting my degree, and it goes back to passion too. So at one day in August, I was driving around, and I was in an old car that I had, old beat up car, I had no air conditioning, and it was super hot. And my school was doing construction on the parking garage. I'm sure you've all dealt with stuff like that. And I was just baking in my car, couldn't find a parking spot because there was construction everywhere. So I literally just drove home, quit college, never went back. Because as I was driving around, my parents were not happy. Do not do this. Do not do this. I did that because I really knew in my heart of hearts that I didn't have the passion for doing that. I loved playing. I was really good at it, whatever. I was having fun and all of that. But I knew that I didn't want to be a starving musician. I wasn't going to eat, and I think somebody said that earlier, eat and be a graphic designer or something like that at the same time. I knew I wasn't going to make a good living doing it because I wasn't going to be in it with the passion. So anyway, I started making my own music, got into the computer, the Mac, started spending more time making the CD covers than I was making the music going on the CD. And I realized graphic design was something I was very interested in. I saw an ad for a Mac artist wanted in the Penny Saver. I called this woman every day for weeks. Hey, can I come in? And so finally she lets me come in. She said, let me see your portfolio. I said, what's a portfolio? She said, well, you got to have examples of your work. And I was like, well, I never did anything, but just let me come in and hang around. I just want to watch what you guys do because I'm so interested in this. And she's like, thanks, but no thanks. You're on your way. So I continued to call her every day for weeks, 10 o'clock in the morning. Hi, Darla, how you doing? It's Paul. We'd have our coffee together. It became like a funny thing. One day, a bunch of people call in sick. And she says, I actually could use you. Can you come in? So I came in. I didn't know how to do anything on the computer, but she made me literally with an X-Acto knife, cut out things in physical form and glue them with wax, like old newspaper stuff. For 14 or 15 hours, we sat there, we listened to music, we talked. On the way out, I said, listen, let me come in for 2 weeks for free. I'm not going to, you don't have to pay me. But after 2 weeks, if you like the work and you want me to stick around and I can get the job, then you'll give me the job, you'll pay me for the 2 weeks. And that's that. If not, I walk away. I'll stop calling you. I won't bother you anymore. Right? So after 2 weeks, she said, okay, you're hired. 4 months after that, they promoted me to be her boss. She quit. But the point is, be willing to do anything. Again, that was kind of an internship. I didn't know anything about graphic design, but I went home every night and I read books until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning of what everybody was doing that day in the office. I'd Quark Express and Adobe Photoshop and all of these books, just big books. I was just reading and playing, and I'd go back to work with 2 hours of sleep, and I just loved it. I was the passion. I just loved it. I took to it. I knew I wanted to do this for a living. And that was, again, and it also goes back to the technology thing, right? She was a little bit on the way, a little older, a little bit less knowledgeable about the technology. I was coming in gangbusters, ready to, take on the world. So anyway, don't give up. Keep trying.
Competitive market out there.
I made my own opportunity is what I'm saying.
But it's a good story, but it's a competitive market. Whatever you're thinking about doing, it's a competitive market. You guys will graduate, and you're thinking about your graduation class. Well, there's thousands of students graduating at the same time, looking for similar or the same jobs. So this kind of drive, that kind of self-commitment, I think there's some self-confidence in there as well. Got to have a little of that too, self-awareness, self-confidence. But That's a good story.
Fake the self-confidence. If you don't have it, people will buy it.
So James,
Okay.
James, what's interesting about that is that at the time we were a small company. And I didn't want to work in the city because I wanted to be home at a halfway decent size. But we do a lot of work with a lot of agencies in the city. And I remember there were some large ones, and we were a small little nothing company out on the island. And it's funny because in the office I have a folder on my desktop, and it's called People to Kill. And I take reels of all these, other agencies or motion graphic or design shops. And we'll be looking at at me and some of the designers and art directors. We'd look at their reels, and I'd be like, you know what that is, Dan? He's like, they go on the list. I'm like, yeah. And it's kind of fun, you try not to be shy because they're going after some big game stuff, and we went after one. And I'm happy to say that we won a fair amount of bids. That if you knee-jerk reaction, if you were to look at it, you'd be like, wow, a small company like this, there's no way they're going to get that. But, we took the shot, and we had that drive, we want to take them out. And, it's kind of a fun, it's a pride thing. And you do it. People to kill.
Yeah, but the brass ring was there for you guys. So commit to yourselves. Remember, I said earlier, you invest in yourselves. So I'm going to read a list. These are master these skills. These are the skills that employers most want. Problem solving, I said it earlier, communication, teamwork, digital tech, leadership, professionalism, career management, and global understanding. Global understanding is pretty cool, and when you've got agencies up here that do global work, you certainly understand what that means. But with that, what can you tell us in the audience that would help us in the academic community to prepare students better, to sort of stay relevant? Is there a way to teach this kind of stuff? Problem solving, communication, teamwork, digital tech, leadership, and so on. Can that be taught? Who wants to take it? Andrew, I see the wheels going.
I don't know that it can be taught, but it can be practiced and it can be honed. And I think you guys are doing it every day a little bit without knowing it, right? And you listed out a lot of things there, and so some of them might be things that you guys are practicing without realizing it more than others. But I mean, I'm sure you guys have your group projects, for example, right, where you have to understand how to delegate and how to manage the process, and how to deal with interpersonal dynamics and all those kinds of things. And I think the thing that you need to take away is that all those things do matter. Like, those things actually play a role in the foundational skill set that you have as a person. And so I alluded to this earlier with the digital thing, and I think it's important because I think sometimes people are like, well, here is my professional experience, and it's like this one thing that I did, and like it's this one other thing. But really, and I'm sure, again, Colette can probably, I hope, would agree with me, is that it goes beyond, your experience is your full breadth of like your life experience, right? Jimmy mentioned global worldview, right? Study a semester abroad. You'd be surprised how much that can help in terms of understanding how different cultures think and engage with, the world around them. And play into that when you're interviewing. Those are the things that make you unique. No two people in the room, even though a lot of you might have the same majors, you all have different experiences, and those experiences define who you are. When I'm interviewing someone, obviously I'm not in talent or HR, but I do obviously interview people for roles on my team. And I'll be honest, I don't spend too much time looking at the resume. Like, I use it to understand who they are, but I don't use it to understand why I need to hire them. Why I need to hire them comes from the conversation that I have with that person, and it's beyond what's on the piece of paper. It's what you can tell me about the richness of your experience.
Totally agree.
Well said. On that note, we can go home.
I'm glad, because I was I feel like I was just speaking to the void, so I'm glad that affirmation really meant a lot. It really did. Thank you. Thank you.
So you brought up something
Just a
interesting.
quick-
Colette, you want to
just a
add
quick
something? I'm sorry.
tidbit. I think as a hiring agent, a person who sees many people during my day, the people who stick out to me the most are the people who question me, who have questions for me, who have questions about, what their daily life is going to be like at my company. what the 6-month, realm is going to look like in their roles. Like, people who question are people who think, and that's who we need. That's who we want on board. People who can look at problems and think about them and question them, because that helps us do better.
I think that's a really, really good point. And I think the other thing that questions do when you're interviewing and you're asking questions, it forces you to have a dialogue, right? It forces you to kind of go into the unknown a little bit, because you don't know what the answer to that question is going to be, and you need to be prepared to engage in whatever the answer is, right? So I find some people come across very rehearsed when they're interviewing, and it's like you can tell that they just practiced it in their mirror like a half hour ago. And those are the people that probably don't think as critically or on their feet as well as people who are willing to engage in a dialogue. And I think questions are often a really good way to start that conversation.
So key word there, dialogue and conversation. Interview, by definition, guys, is a conversation between two people with the intention to exchange information. If you go to an interview and it's a monologue, question, answer, it'll be a failed interview. It must be a dialogue. So you've got to research who you're seeing, what they do, who they do it for, why they do it, so you can ask meaningful questions at an interview. Because inevitably, they're going to say toward the end, you have any questions for me? And if you say no, you're not getting hired.
Yep.
And
Interview over.
It's not based on the resume when you're there. Resume's job is to get you in, then it's up to you to sell it. You got to nail it down there, and that is the cultural fact of it. How you mix, what kind of questions you ask. And it's the meaningful stuff, not when's lunch, how many vacation days. You got to ask good, meaningful questions. And if you research the company, you will have questions to ask.
Yeah, well, that can be a question that you did some research and you have a question about that research, but it can also be a question about what you just talked about with the interviewer, which is almost even better.
Make it
right?
a conversation.
As opposed to that stock question that you read online, like questions to ask in an interview, and you've got those.
No, I'm not suggesting
ones.
that either.
What do you like most about
find
your
own.
job? Like, I mean, that can't be your only question.
Yeah.
That can be a question, but it can't be your only question.
I don't know what this lunch thing you speak of is, Jimmy, but we don't have any lunch in the advertising
I'm sorry.
industry. So
My bad. I should know that.
Yeah.
So that's true. That's why people work at Google. They have on-site
exactly.
eating, and you never leave, but you eat.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Moving right along. I'm going to start with Paul, but I want everyone's spin on this, or whoever else wants to do it. I'm putting it to Paul first because I mentioned before networking. 80% of the jobs are secured through networking, who you know. Paul and I are on the board of the Advertising Production Club of New York. Paul's a past president. I'm a past education chairman. So I know the value of what professional organizations can provide for you. So I want Paul to sort of tell you what networking is, what a professional organization can provide. How important is it? And every industry, by the way, has some organization to support it. Every industry. Google it, you'll find one. But let's talk about networking.
I mean, obviously, I was president of this particular one, so I'm a fan of this idea of these industry things, organizations, and also events. I think it's almost like an internship, like what I said earlier. It's an opportunity to meet people that are doing what you want to do, ultimately, in places you want to do it, and ask them questions and get to know them, so that when you're looking for a job, like even doing this right here, like I know if I need an advertising job, I now know somebody in the business that does that, right? You know, things like that. If I need special effects and graphics for something I'm working on Showtime, I got a great agency right here. So we're just like networking, we're talking, we're getting out there and doing those kinds of things. So I think it's huge, there are huge opportunities. And the other thing about it is they're typically attached to some kind of cause, which I think is great and especially important for your generation, which I know, people like to say you guys really like to feel like you're a part of a bigger cause and stuff like that. So, doing good at the same time of like expanding your horizons and meeting people and putting yourself out there, I think is nothing but positive.
Anybody else want to talk about network?
When I first started out, I actually looked up editors who were doing work that I was interested in, and I cold emailed them. I didn't cold call them because people hate cold calling, right? But cold emailing, and I'd say, can I take you out for coffee and just ask you some questions? And that actually did lead to an internship. So don't be afraid to cold contact somebody. Again, I probably wouldn't do phones these days.
Yeah, not really. Caller ID.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to take it, or I'll move on to another question? Okay. So,
I would just say that, I'm sorry, I'll just, if you haven't already, build up your LinkedIn profile. I mean, it makes a big difference. It's the touchstone for a lot of people when you're first starting out, and even when you're not first starting out. You know, it's kind of like the one piece of consistency. It's your living, breathing resume, and I would highly recommend that you do that and build as many networks as possible. And like digital networking can be as effective as interpersonal networking.
Well, that's a great point, though, because
Yeah.
they're sort of virtual industry organizations. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sort of this, it's the modern version of it, right?
yeah, some of the data on LinkedIn, just to share with you, 50% of the hiring community won't touch you if you're not on LinkedIn. 50%. 20% will pass if you don't have your photo. It validates us today. Not some, not a lot. All hiring managers, Colette can tell me if I'm wrong, but everyone's looking at LinkedIn. If they like you on paper, they're going to look you up on LinkedIn. So you've got to have your profile up to date. Keep it relevant, keep it up to date. So it does validate you today when you're looking to be hired and or when you're networking. Okay, so this is pretty much for anybody. The crash of 2008 forced a lot of industries to live with do more with less. And when you think about doing more with less, obviously you cannot. You really can't. Advertising, I know, has been hit hard with more with less. But every industry has been hit by that. A lot of people got laid off, lost their jobs. We learned how to accomplish more with less. People just worked harder and worked more hours, but we got it done. So how does more with less work in your workplace? Does it impact output, morale? How do you deal with that? I'm going to ask Colette to start with that one. Is it even an issue?
Well, I look at it as an opportunity for me.
All right, so there's the plus side to this.
You know, because we do operate slim in our HR department. So we have to wear many hats, and that helps me in my career because I get experience in all these different aspects of HR. So don't be afraid to take on more work because, you know, at the end, it'll only make you much more diverse in your background and give you exposure to different areas within a company that you wouldn't have normally gotten if you were just wearing this one hat. So, you know, don't be afraid to roll up your sleeves and do whatever to get exposure in different areas in a business because at the end of the day, when that business is, you know, cutting back, you know, you'll be an asset because you have all of these different skills and all of this knowledge. So you'll be one of the people that, you know, has the upper hand.
Yes. It sounds like a cliche, but it really is true. It is an opportunity. In my industry, we use a lot of like slick words to describe our teams, like lean and mean or nimble, or, you know. But really, we're just understaffed, and you really do have to use that as an opportunity. And like for me, it comes down to how many different businesses am I tied to? Because that, for me, I'm always in the back of my mind thinking like, how protected am I, right? If one of these pieces of business would go away, right? And the more ties you make internally, the safer you are. And I know that sounds like a little bit like political, but it kind of is. I mean, and it does help you. It helps you grow, of course, professionally and helps you meet other people internally. But there is, I mean, you got to look out for number one when you're in this cutthroat environment. And sometimes like being involved in more things can help you be more indisposable should one of those things drop away. So.
When you step up and you initiate, you earn trust. And if you earn trust from people, you get more responsibility. And more responsibility, of course, is going to make you more valuable. And it's all about added value. What can you do for them? It's never about you when you're looking for a job. Never. It's about them and their needs. If you fit the criteria, they want you. They want to talk to you. But if you don't, next. So what added value can you bring? And what they're talking about here, by stepping up, taking on more responsibility, it makes you more of an added value. So part of that crash of 2008, it really also sparked the gig economy. Does everyone know what the gig economy is? So some do. Okay. Well, I'm not going to get into a whole definition, but really what it is, it created a world for consultants. People did lose their jobs, but they had to work. So they became consultants. It became a freelance universe. And it's not just in advertising, creative services, all industries. Consulting became a big part, and they call it the gig economy. What's your gig for the day? It's got not the gig in a computer, but the gig for work. But it's another byproduct of 2008. And is it a viable way, because I know a lot of you guys use freelance consultants, outsourcing, is it a viable way for someone to make a living today? Colette's got on this one.
So before I came on board at my current company, I was a consultant for 7 years, and I started my own LLC. So what I would do is that I developed the hunter attitude because, number one, I didn't have a full-time regular role to fall back on. So I would have to get my own assignments, and then I would sell my skills, and then I would go on site. So that's how I started. I think as a consultant, what happens when you go for a role, you start working in a specific role that you were hired for, but then they give you other things because they see that you're eager, they see that you're skilled, they see that you're productive. So they're like, oh, this person looks like a good fit. So let's give her some more diverse work. Let's give her some, areas in compensation, or let's give her some areas in benefits. What I'm basically saying is that as a consultant, you get exposure to so many things. You get different projects thrown on your plate that expose you to many different areas. Do not sniff your nose at being a consultant. It's great pay. It may not have, the bells and whistles of a permanent company, but in the end, you do become more experienced and more knowledgeable as a consultant because you're just exposed to so many different things within a company. And then when I went for my current role, because I had that varied background, and all of these different experiences in HR outside of my true profession, which is talent acquisition, it was an easy hire for them. So make yourself, profitable. Make yourself easy to be selected.
Great advice, guys. So I'm going to wind this down because I want to open the floor up to you guys. Colette, can you tell me what I'll keep your resume on file really means?
I want to know this too, so I can't wait.
It means just that. We definitely, so as a recruiter, I may not have a role for you. There's a lot of people who contact me via LinkedIn, or they'll see my name on Google, and they'll just automatically send their resume to me and say, hey, I noticed that you work for an advertising company. Look at my resume. Is there a role for me? And I'll look at it and I'll say, you know what? I don't have something right now, but I will definitely think about you and keep your resume. And if something were to come up, I will definitely contact you. And if I can absolutely 100% say that I do contact people who have the skills that I need. It may not be a month from now, it may be 6 months from now. But, we do keep your resume. But also, too, I want to follow up with that. It's not up to us to get you a job. It's up to you to get you a job.
Yeah.
So that person who you sent your resume to, keep in touch with them. Drop a line. Hey, I sent my resume a month ago. Anything develop? I know you're busy. Something along those lines. Keep yourself, on the top of that person's mindset, so when they do have something, you're the first one they think of.
Nicely said. Nicely said.
Maybe we should probably talk about this a little bit more, though, this whole resume thing. But, it's always better to have someone else hand a resume into a job opening, right? Not just blindly sending it in through a website or a web portal, a career site or whatever on your own. Of course, there's success there. People do get jobs that way. But it's always better if you know somebody at the company, or you know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody at the company, to kind of put the word in for you with the resume attached. Hey, this is a good kid. Can you at least put him on the right pile? Again, still totally agree. It's up to you to get the job. You're not going to get handed anything, but you could at least maybe get on the right pile, because if I advertise an entry-level position, within 2 days, I have 2,000 resumes. So what are the odds that I'm just going to pick one out of the pile and it's going to be the perfect person, right? The odds are low. It happens, but the odds are low. Usually it's the referral, somebody knows somebody that I wind up calling in for an interview that I wind up hitting it off with and I like, and and it works out, right? So and that goes back to the networking.
You want to be on the short list,
Yeah.
and networking will do that. So,
Come in.
dinner's ready. When I talk to students, I always share my favorite acronym, and that's FAIL, F-A-I-L, First Attempt in Learning. Now, I wish I could say I invented that, I did not. But first attempt in learning, FAIL. I personally think it's a great way to learn. So I tell students, when you fall, when you fail, own it. Just tell your boss, I think, or I know I screwed up. You're showing integrity, and you'll move on, you'll learn from it. So tell us, anybody, the value of falling and failing. Is there value to it? I know we all have done it. So Andrew, you laugh the loudest, so you can take it first.
I don't know that we have enough time to go through all my failures. I'll start. I mean, you're going to fail a lot, like in your career. It's going to happen. It happens. And anyone who says that they haven't failed a lot is lying. I think I think Jimmy's exactly right, that you need to turn that into a learning experience. And I'll be honest, when I started my career, I wore my heart on my sleeve way too much. In fact, the first couple of years in my career, probably the biggest feedback that I got, in reviews and all that, was like, you can't beat yourself up so much when you make a mistake. I remember my first boss always used to say, like, no one bats 1,000, man. Like, you got to learn from it. You got to understand, like, what could have gone better, and you got to dust yourself off and get right back in the game. There are times where I would spend a whole day retracing emails that I've written to like justify why I did what I did, and I was like, I got so deep into this like rabbit hole, and meanwhile my work wasn't getting done because I was just like trying to like, and so I think that it takes a little bit of time, I think, but eventually you realize that no one's going to die, right? Unless there are any like aspiring surgeons in the room. I don't know. But,
Not in this group.
but in general, no one's going to die if you make a mistake. And I do think it's really important that you have a healthy, positive attitude about failing because, it's a great acronym and one that I've never heard before. It really is, and now I tell it to the people on my team when they seem to be despondent over something that could have gone better. I say, listen, like, it's valuable to understand what happened, and I always say this to them, I guarantee it's not going to happen again. And I never mean that as a threat. I mean that as a guarantee because they're not going to let it happen again because they're drawing from their experience. So try to remember that. Like, no one's perfect, and there is a lot of value that can come out of the mistakes that you make.
I once sent a book to press that was supposed to say public library on it. It said pubic library. Trust me. At least I can laugh about it now. I couldn't look anybody in the eye for days.
There's an audience for that kind of a library.
In children's books?
Big seller.
I hope not.
The room is small enough that you probably could just shout your questions out. There is a mic here, it's handheld. So any questions for this esteemed panel? Go ahead. We're going to do about 10 or so minutes of Q&A, and then we'll do a little networking, but go ahead.
Hi, my name is Lauren Thank you guys for being here. My question for all of you is, what's your most favorite and your least favorite part of your job?
Did everyone hear the question in the back? Most favorite, least favorite part of their job. So we're not going to let everybody talk because we only have so much time, but who wants to grab it? Somebody.
I have a favorite. When I see a kid reading a book I edited on the subway. My least favorite is, of course, since I am a manager, I still have to do stupid things like Excel spreadsheets. No matter what job you do Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, I mean, I guess best part of the job is really that it's different every day. I think that's what really drew me to the whole idea of production in general, is just that every day is a new puzzle to solve. And it could be trying to figure out how to do a photo shoot in another country, or it could be like some employees having an issue. It could be any one of those things, but every day presents a new challenge. Sure.
So are there any bad things?
I mean, similar. You know, it's the managing parts of it. It's managing people who take too many sick days and leave their team hanging, or it's performance reviews every year that you have to do. It's those kind of mundane tasks that drive me nuts. Yeah, the admin stuff.
But part of the territory.
Yeah.
I just want to agree with Paul on the no 2 days are the same thing. I mean, that really makes a big difference. Like going into work every day and like not really knowing exactly what's going to happen is really exciting, and it really gets the creative juices flowing. And so that's something that I definitely embrace. I'll say that personally, as in my particular role, there's a lot of interpersonal managing that needs to happen between different disciplines like creatives and clients and people like Paul who are in production and they all have slightly different viewpoints, and everyone wants to do the right thing and everyone thinks they're doing the right thing, and sometimes it's my job to help navigate the differences between those opinions, which by its very nature can sometimes leave some people feeling less satisfied than others, which is a difficult part of the job. But hopefully at the end of the day, everyone feels the value in collaboration. But sometimes those days are challenging.
So, yeah, having that common end goal got to help.
Yep. Oh yeah, for sure.
But people management
But
is
the
not
way
fun.
that we get to that end goal sometimes is a point of contention.
Eric.
Question for Peter. Being that you're in the entertainment industry and that you meet a lot of people every day, who would be the most valuable people to approach when you're looking for these kinds of referrals? Who are the most valuable people to be around?
I guess it depends on the industry.
Music specifically.
Music, well, are you looking for commercial music, or are you looking to be a singer? What type of stuff you? Okay, so a music business.
I happen to know Eric, and he's interested in music management, correct? So does that help at all?
Entertainment industry, who are the most valuable people?
You'd probably want to get in touch with most music producers out there and see what their talent. So you're trying to like hire talent and kind of manage them and that kind of stuff.
Yes. I want to run the organization.
Yeah, well, I would probably try to get into as was said earlier, if you can get in some kind of internship in some kind of a music production company, work your way and network through there, and kind of get the lay of the land. It's a tough industry. It's a tough industry, especially now. There's some amazing stock things out there. That's really just surprisingly amazing. But yeah, I mean, it's a great industry. I have a couple of friends that are in it, and they love it, but it's tough.
So I want to just add to that. I believe Andrew had made reference to the digital natives. I'm an immigrant, comfortable, but never as fluid as you. But Eric, all of you, you know how to access information. That's what this is about. You're asking who are the best people. You're asking an industry professional, which is a good question. But really the answer, you have it at your fingertips. It's not even the who, it's how. You know how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, looking at music, we hire a lot. Obviously, we do a lot of our original music that we create for our trailers or our boxing shows or things like that, and we use music in every commercial that we make or promo, right? So we have a company that we use. It's a music production company, commercial music production company. You should be looking that up on LinkedIn, finding it, seeing if you can just come in, hang around, kind of like what I did. Can I just come around, sit in the back of the studio and watch you work for a half a day or something like that? I'm a college kid looking for a break. Send them a pizza around 11:30 when people start getting hungry. It's a good way in. You got to get creative.
So I'm going to give you Paul's number so you can call him every day for several weeks.
Around 11:30.
Around 11:30. Send a pizza.
There's leftover pizza here. You can take one.
Just
of
a
those.
margarita.
So, actually, I believe the hand behind you went up first, so we'll start there and come back. Go ahead. Speak loud, okay?
Hello, my name is Burt. My question is for Colette. Being that you're a hiring manager and are one of the few guys who do the interviews, I just want to know some type of thing that you're looking for when you call somebody back for, say, a third or a second interview. Is it more of the same that you look for like an initial interview, or is it shifting?
That's a very good question. No. Because when you're coming in for your second and third interview, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, oh, so who have you met with, and what can you tell me about your second and third interviews? And then I'm going to look for you to tell me how you can sort of fit into the position based on what you learned in those second and third interviews. So when you come in for second and third interviews, it's a cumulative thing. So we're looking how you remember what you've heard and how maybe the information that you learned from your first interview differs from your third interview. And also, how you can adjust to that as a candidate. And I'm going to expect you to tell me that. You're welcome.
You can also just state the obvious. When you go to an interview, bring a copy of your resume. You would be amazed at how many people don't actually bring a copy, or it's a crumpled copy or something like that. And you're like, you really? You just come for this interview and
This man speaks the truth.
right? And write a thank you, like within, I'm gonna say
Within
5
24
hours.
yeah.
I
No
want to
less.
thank you in my inbox, saying thank you for taking the time for the interview. Not an hour later. That's a little too soon. That's a little creepy almost. Like you're on the subway out of there. But send a thank you, bring a resume, dress appropriately. These are things that you'd be amazed at how many people don't do that.
Guys, if you're one of the many when you're looking for work, that's what you are. You're one of the many. What you need to do is think about, and don't do it differently, think it differently. But how are you going to separate yourself? These
right.
little subtleties are part of those separators, and that's what makes an impact. The key when you meet people, well, they remember you. If they don't, you made no impact. So dressing poorly, crumpled resume, you made an impact, but you're not getting hired. And don't bring one copy, actually bring several. Suppose the interview goes really well, and they want to bring you down the hall to meet someone else. You may need more than one.
Yeah.
So, that's good stuff. Okay, you were patiently waiting.
Well, my name is Colette. This is an open question for anyone to grab.
Speak loud so they can hear.
My name is Colette, so this is a question for anyone. So in this world, we're trying to innovate and come up with new ideas. How is it to balance being idealistic and realistic?
Good question.
Work-life balance is really important. I know when you're at your first job, it's almost cool to say, well, I was here until 9 last night. Are you doing your best work, though, if you're there until 9 every night? So I understand the idealistic approaches. I'm going to impress them. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to be the jack of all trades. But if you're not doing your best work because you're overworked, that doesn't make a good impression.
Okay, anybody else? Right there.
Hello, my name is Eva, and my question for all of you actually is, say a person wants to become the best at their craft, but they don't have the time to improve. What do you, how do you make time in order to, improve your craft?
You got to find the time. I mean, there's what was the notion 10,000 hours. It takes 10,000 hours to actually master something. Like they always say the Beatles played 10,000 hours to become the Beatles. Ultimately, it takes time. I mean, you have to put the time in. Nothing comes easy. If it came easy, there'd be a million people that could do that job, and then no one would get the job because everybody would be able to do it. Or, so you have to separate yourself, and you have to be better at it than the next guy.
The one interesting thing is if you're really passionate, you'll find a time. I'm in bed and I'm on my iPhone. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm just like, "Oh, I'm looking at some designs. I think these are cool." And it's it's not even like you work at it. You kind of have that yearning to kind of just want to do it.
You sometimes live it, and there's a danger to work-life balance in that regard. But when you start out, I think Paul's right. I'm not interested in the 5 reasons why you can't do something. I want to hear the 1 reason why you can.
Yeah, how are you going to help me? I mean, we had a kid whose sister actually worked for me in my rights and clearances team, and he came out of school with a video production degree. I think he went to Platt or Plattsburgh, SUNY Plattsburgh, some kind of video production degree. And, we had a pretty good interview, but he just wasn't the winner of that particular round, so he didn't get the job. But I called him back a couple of months later, and what have you been doing? And he said, well, I'm working at a deli, and I said, well, what have you been cutting? Like, what videos have you been making? Let me see what you've been actually working on. He's like, I haven't had the time to really do much of that. And I was like, well, what are you doing here then? Because you're making potato salad. Like, I don't need potato salad. I need somebody that can edit video. So you better be editing video. But more importantly, you better want to be editing video.
Yeah.
So can I give you just a pointer on that? I used to work for a company called Samsung. I'm sure you all know it. One of the good pointers that the CEO gave everybody was he learned something new every week. So he takes a half an hour out of his week. You have 7 days in a week. You can take a half an hour out of a week and learn something new or practice something that you want to get better at. So I would say it really is an investment in yourself. So if you want to get better at something, it doesn't have to be a day or, that you're spending on something new to learn. It can be a half an hour to learn something new, to make yourself
I'm
better.
going to take one last question because we are going to open up for networking. Right there in the back. Speak.
My name's Heather. Jody and I have met before. You spoke about a career not being a straight line, being a bit of a zigzag. As someone who is more of a mid-career person, any advice for someone who is looking to make a bit of a pivot there, how they might go about that?
Are you asking me or you're asking them?
You're the career coach.
Uh-oh. So, if you recall, when I kind of opened this up, I used the word change, talked about how disruptive it is, but embrace change. I'm a career pivot. I lived it. I know career disruption. My career ended on circumstances I had no control over. So transition's one thing, disruption's entirely different, but the bottom line is change. So if you are passionate about something, you got to eat it, sleep it, drink it. You got to make it happen. Everybody here has just talked about that. So making a pivot at any stage, but as mid-career, it's more challenging. Age plays a role. Age discrimination plays a role in the hiring community. No matter what anyone will tell you, it does. When I was recruiting, Jimmy, nice resume, but overqualified. It's a veiled way sometimes of too old. We legally can't say that. So you've got forces working against you. So it reduces odds, but it makes a challenge more difficult, but how badly do you want it? You have to ask yourself, the word investment, I used it earlier, Colette just said it. You've got to invest in yourself. That's what this is about. This is your ride. As a career coach, I tell all my students, my job is not to give you the job, get you the job. I don't write your resume, I don't write your cover letter. I'll help you, but the heavy lifting is always on you. So I know it's sort of a general abstract answer, but it's really substantially true. You've got to be committed to you and the direction you think you want to go. And explore, and in that exploring, learn and network. Networking is the secret sauce. You can go online and do it all day long, it can be effective, but networking is the secret sauce. So professional organizations, I mentioned it earlier, every industry has them. Find one, join, meet people who could possibly give you your next opportunity.
Can I add to that really quick?
I would prefer if you'd like you to.
So I work in an industry where there actually are a fair amount of people who, might be older than people that they report into, which sounds like it's a strange dynamic, and might be for some people. But what I've found is the people that are most successful in that situation are the ones that embrace that fact. I've seen situations before where people try to hide the fact that they're older, or people try to downplay how much experience they have, or they'll kind of try to skirt it, which just feels weird. It adds more awkwardness to the situation. The people that have been loud and proud about the experience they've had, or that, and you said pivot. I mean, like the people that can draw from experiences from their previous career and use that as an asset and use that as a talking point and not shy away from that. One, it makes the whole dynamic more comfortable, because honestly, I think a large part of ageism is this discomfort level that people feel between a very what they perceive to be a very unnatural dynamic. So breaking down that barrier like early and addressing it, I think can go a long way, and then owning that moving forward as a positive rather than something that you perceive as a hindrance.
Yeah. So just to add to that, look, your story is your story at any stage. If you don't embrace who you are, what are you going to do? So I'm a believer in, for the most part, honesty is the best policy. And I endorse what Andrew is saying. Your story is your story. We are who we are. And the more you try to be what you're not, the more you're going to screw it up. People see it. These are people who know how to read people. They hire, they interact with people, they engage with people all day long. You're not going to fool them. So again, but I think the part of the key word is drive, investing in yourself, passion. It's come up a lot tonight, and there's a lot to be said for that. So the one hand that went up in the back, and that'll be the last question, and then I'm going to close it out so you guys can swarm. LinkedIn, look, the data supports it. It really validates us today. It's the only professional online portal.
He said 50%. It
was 50% of the hiring community.
The picture part, you're saying, do you all really want to see a picture of someone on LinkedIn?
So.
Yes.
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 I
All
do.
right.
I'm surprised to hear that, only because people assume things when they see your last name. People judge sometimes by what they read, and I don't know, I kind of like to be more anonymous.
So, but anonymous.
My last name and they assume certain things.
But what are you hiding?
I'm not hiding.
What are you hiding?
What are you hiding?
Senator.
I'm not saying that you're ignorant, but I think that some people are ignorant and they associate certain last names with certain behaviors, and it can be unfair. So I kind of like, I'm the type of person where read what I'm about, and then you'll, you have to see.
Well,
Interesting.
my
I mean, if you're telling me that's what you do, then.
well, my last name,
I'm not going to stop learning from you.
my last name's not really, you wouldn't associate Levinstein with me. so when most people see me, they're like, oh, you're Colette Levinstein. I think, if you go in with a mindset that, that some people associate or stereotype against you, I think that shows in the way how you interview and how you interact with people. I think it's really important just to be who you are. I'm my name, I can't change it, it's who I am. And, if you put up your picture, if someone's not gonna like you because of your picture or because of your last name, then chances are you probably wouldn't wanna work for them anyway.
Yeah.
So, but the photo, think about when you meet someone. Tonight, you come up to someone you meet for the first time, you go to a networking event. Hi, my name is. What are we doing? We're engaging eye contact. It personalizes. That's a lot of what those photos do. It fuels personalization. So it's not a matter of they're going to judge me because of my hair or this, my color, whatever it is, but it does personalize.
I think you are being judged, though. I mean, I think that's a fair statement. I think no matter what, we all put ourselves out there on social media in some way, and we get judged for every single thing we post or say or put our picture out there, right? I mean, there's all kinds of unconscious bias in the world that they see your name or they see your picture or the way you took the picture. Oh, that's so artsy. That guy must be full of himself or whatever. You have these thoughts as soon as you see something. I think it's a fair point.
I think also, I don't know what field you're going into, but let's just say it's design. I don't know if it is. So your job, you're being hired by my company to be a designer to represent my clients. And if LinkedIn, although it doesn't give you much design sense, right? But that's your brand. When I go to that page, that's your brand. And having a piece that's kind of a visual piece that's missing, maybe subconsciously is sort of like, wow, she doesn't have a complete look, and she's marketing herself. You're the product, and it's kind of a missed hole. Maybe there's a feeling that maybe you didn't go all in on it.
Yeah.
It's a good debate, and I think you bring a good point up because people do unconscious bias. But I think Colette brought up a great point. Probably not someone we want to work for. Why would you want to associate with that kind of attitude quality? So just a couple of quick statements. I'm going to wrap this up so we get a quick network session. And I'm going to ask you, by the way, to be cognizant of there'll be people lined up, so don't hijack the conversation. Be aware of who's behind you. They want to talk to them as well. So final words. Education makes a better brain. Remain relevant. Don't stop learning. When you get your degree, you're not done. You're just beginning. Webinars, TED Talks, YouTube. Information's at your fingertips. Think about what's in front of you. It's not ending with your degree, it's beginning. Education makes a better brain. So before I wrap it up, I want to acknowledge a few people before we begin the networking portion, and that is this awesome group, Lex, Paul, Pete, Andrew, Colette, thank you so much. I have to give a shout out to the Career Center because they helped me facilitate this kind of event. That support is amazing for me. All of my interns, or our interns at the Career Center, are really extraordinary, but a special shout out for the ones that stepped up to help me tonight, Duffy, Nalaja, Tiffany, and Adam. Thank you very much. My colleague, Kimberly Joy Dixon, who I believe has left, but Kimberly, for all her help, guidance. I learn from her every day, and it's invaluable to me. Learning never stops. Education makes a better brain. And finally, you guys for coming tonight. Thank you very much. Well, I'm sorry, the video crew, School of Journalism. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, guys. So we got the hall for a little bit of time. Don't kill them.